Hi, everybody. My name is Donna Gorton. Welcome to my show, Willows. And this week we are going to be discussing the Book of Enoch and all that it entails. Plus, well, of course, there's always a little bit more, right? Like that's just the nature of my show. So, for anybody who is listening in or watching globally, YouTube, Soma Fusion, whichever, thank you. It's always appreciated. I do monitor the chat from my Facebook group, Willows. So if you see me looking off to the side, that is all I'm doing is monitoring my chat and comments that come in. I mean, anything anybody comments from outside of my group does come into there, so I'll see it regardless. So yeah, so I'll wait for everybody to kind of get coming in here and get settled, so to speak, and then we will get this party started. And I hope everybody out there is well and has had a good weekend. I know we've had like a heat resurgence here in upstate central New York. I don't like the heat. I don't do well in the heat. It's just been kind of yucky. So it's been a quieter kind of day because of that. It's hotter today than it was yesterday. Starting to kind of cool off down there now, which is good. I'm grateful for that. Just saying hi to everybody in my chat so they know I see them and give them my love. Here we go. Hi, Sandy. You are the first one in tonight. I don't know why that's making notification tones. I did turn it all off. Let me double check my setting.
And again, for those, I forgot to turn it off. But for those who are over on my wall, who are commenting, the other chat is also available. So go over to the Soma Fusion page and you're going to see the rest of them.
Cool. Hi, Renee. So I just shut off everything again. Sometimes it resets itself because my phone has a life of its own. So anyway, hope you guys are well. And I've got the fur babies laying calmly and quietly beside me, which is nice. And they're ready to go, hopefully, as well. Hi, Ted. So as always, my people in Willows, hi, Brenda. They like me to kind of do a circle of protection blessing using sage. So I always do that at the beginning of every show. Let's get a piece of sage here. Just to, it doesn't hurt, right? Put out some positive vibes out there. And I know on my side of things, all my members thus far have been well, and nothing really majorly traumatic has happened in anyone's lives in recent times. So must be doing something right. All right, light her up, Sandy, right? So this stage, I cast a circle of protection around anyone who is watching this show or listening in anywhere around the globe. May this circle of protection dispel any negativity from your life, any ill will or harm brought on by others. Have it be a drama-free zone, always a good thing. And may this follow you out into your personal and private lives outside of the show as well. And keep you well in between, well, from here indefinitely, hopefully. So I will it, so mote it be. Sage, I cleanse my stones of all energy except for their own. I hope they work with mine. I'm going to sage cat because she hasn't been done in a while, so she probably could use it. Oh, she drove me so nuts last night, hippity hopping, and got scratch marks all over me. Just, yeah, they had a very late night party next door last night. I don't agree with having really like toddler little ones out at like 11 o'clock at night while parents are partying and imbibing in beverages, we'll say it that way. And not having somebody completely clean and sober to watch them, but it's going on. Lots of yelling and screaming. Went on to like 11 o'clock last night, and she was just skitsy over the noise. So anyhow, you are very welcome. Yep, I just have one, Ted, little girl. She's kind of, her and Jake are kind of the mascots of the group. So everybody knows them. So tonight we're going to be talking, like I said, about the Book of Enoch, what it is, and its basic contents to give everybody an idea of what it contains. And my lovely admin, Sandy. Hi, how are you, beautiful lady? My Sudafed's not doing enough tonight. They've been mowing like mad everywhere around me, and I'm highly allergic to fresh cut grass. And I think the next round of pollen is entering into the environment. It's just, so forgive any sniffles tonight, just is what it is. So, what is the Book of Enoch? So, the Book of Enoch is an ancient Hebrew apocalyptic religious text. So, Enoch was said to be the great great grandfather of Noah. We all know the biblical story of the flood with Noah and so forth in both the Hebrew and like the international version of the Bible, right? So, he was his great great grandfather. Is not part of the international version of the Bible, didn't get included, although it's mentioned several times throughout the text in various ways. But the whole like text contents of the text in the books he wrote didn't get included. We're going to talk about possible reasons for why that is a little later into the show. But so to start off, the book contains unique material on the origins of, quote, demons, the Nephilim, why some angels allegedly fell from heaven. Hi, Dad. An explanation of why the Genesis flood was morally necessary, and the prophecies of 1,000-year reign of the Messiah. And he has a book of the older section, which was called the Book of the Watchers, and they're estimated to date back to about 300 to 200 BCE, which stands for before current era. It's kind of the new way people measure time, as far as like where it used to be BC or AD, it's now BCE or CE for current era. So just to kind of throw that out there, not everybody is aware. So the latest part of the book dates to about 100 BCE, which was the Book of Parables, is what he called it. And we're going to go into just a little synopsis of what is contained within each book and the text and how it could be perceived from different angles of it. Hi, Kim. The only people who truly continue to follow it today are the Ethiopian Orthodox Catholics, which are a little bit of a unique sect of Catholicism and Christianity, and they're the ones who fully resonate with it. It's practiced here and there, on smaller scales of things, but it's been mainly the Ethiopian Orthodox that continue to follow the Book of Enoch. And some of those texts were also found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Qumran caves in Iraq, Iran. And so that kind of validated their, how, they did exist, basically. So, okay. So my dad's talking to somebody else in chat, I think. So there have been, let's see. So basically the Jews and early Near Eastern Christians were aware of the Book of Enoch or the text of it anyway, because of being found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, or the Dead Sea, part of the Dead Sea Scrolls, sorry. The Essenes were thought to be the ones that wrote most of the scrolls found in those caves, that were, the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were also, again, a unique sect of Christianity. As such, they wrote them down and kind of stashed them in those caves to keep them from invading Romans, who, of course, were trying to force their beliefs on everybody else and kill everybody on their path who didn't believe and wasn't willing to convert to their version of how Christianity ought to be, etc. So they hit them, is what it comes down to. And so the story goes that there was like a young shepherd who was throwing rocks into like the opening of a cave, and was surprised to hear the clunky sound of the stone hitting something that was not just cave wall. So he went to investigate to see what's that noise, and found all these containers that held the scrolls in them. And now some of them, of course, after 2,500 years ago, being written on parchment paper, essentially in papyrus, they're kind of crumbly by now. And so they've had to piece together. Some of it crumbled beyond saving. So there are fragments that are missing, but enough of it was found in those texts to validate the Book of Enoch, and that it did exist, and that they kind of, were holders of that knowledge. Okay, so the most complete Book of Enoch comes from the Ethiopic manuscripts. So now what gets interesting with this text is because he discusses visitation and dreams by sky people and whom he perceives to be angels. But we also have to keep in mind, in any ancient text, religious or not, people identify things based on their knowledge at the time of what things are. And so he perceived beings coming from the sky as being angels, as most people did from that time frame. So that's what he called them. But we're going to get into what all those contain going forward. So there are 5 distinct major sections of the Book of Enoch. There was the Book of Watchers, the Book of Parables by Enoch, the Astronomical Book, the Book of Dream Visions, and the Epistle of Enoch as well. Welcome back, Lori. Now, most scholars think that these 5 sections were originally independent works with different dates when they were written and themselves of much editing, etc., and were later redacted into what's now called one book. So kind of they got written over time, and some even say, is it possible that other people authored some of these things that got edited into, but still presented as Enoch's works? We have no way of knowing that for sure, of course, but people discuss it anyway as possibles of where this all came from. So despite it being widely known during the time of the development of the Hebrew Bible canon, now a canon is basically a collection of religious texts that gets accepted to be kind of a universal foundation of beliefs for, kind of like what the Bible is. Those are the canons of the Christian faith. They got accepted into and put together into the Bible, and that's what it is for the International Bible. And those are accepted to be truth for their faith. And so it's only now regarded as scripture, like I said, by the Ethiopian Orthodox, bear with my pronunciation, Tewahedo Church, and the Eritrean Orthodox Tewahedo Church. And are you saying that you made it back, Sandy? Enoch is mentioned here and there, like I said, in the Bible about 100 times throughout both the Old Testament and the New Testament. But the way they write about him in the texts in the Bible, in the various scriptures, hi Mary, are very much like, it's kind of like everybody already knew about had read the Book of Enoch and was aware of it. So it's almost like mentioned in passing, like referencing it. It doesn't ever, oh, you got lost again. Well, I'm glad you found your way home. So it's never like fully expounded upon in the Bible text. It's just kind of like, again, it's like alluded to. So just like you might mention a book you read somewhere else but had pertinent information to it, you throw it in there, but you kind of assume other people are aware of what something else says, right? Same kind of idea as that. So let's see. What is it all about? That's why we're here, right? We'll figure out what the Book of Enoch is. So Enoch says that he's, quote, a just man. This is how he refers to himself in his writings. Take a swig so I can just not keep holding my cup. Get out of my hands there. So he references himself as being a just man, and he goes on to say, whose eyes were opened by God so that he saw a vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the sons of God showed to me. And from them I heard everything, and I knew what I saw. But these things that I saw will not come to pass for this generation, but for a generation that has yet to come. Hey, Karen and Stacy. So he kind of, he was known as a prophet as well. So that's kind of what he was talking about there, that these things that he's going to bring forward in the material, it's not for his generation, but for generations to come. And many believe in those prophecies to have been true. He does describe the Nephilim or Anakim or Anak as being giants. So about the giants, he says, quote, and pregnant, they bear great giants whose height was 300 ells. And so an ell is a Northwestern European unit of measurement and is equal to the length of your arm to your hand stretched out. So this is one ell. So he's saying that their height was 300 of those. Now, I don't know, I didn't do out the math to calculate exactly how much that would come out to, but this is longer than 12 inches for most people. So it would be like 1.5 feet per ell is what probably the, if you were to balance out and do the exchange into feet instead of ells. So 300 of those, he said that's how tall they are. Who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Pretty gruesome, right? It also discusses each of the humans by the fallen angels, chiefly being Azazel. Now, he does think that the fallen angels basically interbred with human women, started getting a little lusty there after them, and the giants were the result of that mating. That story is remarkably throughout many people's origin stories that are completely unrelated, faiths, belief systems, geographical locations, etc., throughout the world, and as part of their origin story. So just like the Bible has Genesis, everybody has their own beginning stories of where mankind came from, and that tends to be always part of it, just like the Great Flood does. And science now has proven that yes, there was a great flood that went over the earth, that's reflected in the rock layers. So when geologists are measuring something time-wise of how long ago something perhaps happened or what it was that happened, the depth of something so say if you cut a section of a cliff face off, it'll show you this. They're called stratas, and those are the layers that you can definitely see through different time periods what environmental conditions may have been. And so they have, the different layers in there. And there is one that does back up that a great flood did happen globally. And, through mixtures of sediment that aren't natural to a certain location, as well as they use other testing mechanisms to determine it, but it's backed up in a logical record. So that said, pretty much every group of people on Earth have their own version of the story, but it's not what caused it. That can be left for interpretation from one group of people to another. The Book of Enoch is considered to be blasphemous by the church, its context as well as the book Didymus Thomas. Correct. Hence the term doubting Thomas. But again, it's still Enoch is still referenced throughout the Bible in over 100 times, but not in a negative way, because again, he was the great-great-grandfather of Noah. So, but his book was not accepted, and we're going to talk about why it perhaps was considered the totally just and from the Bible, what the ramifications some material would mean to mainstream religion, Christianity as we know it around the world today. And hey, Marianne, of what if you were to incorporate this and open it wide, especially with the prophecies, etc. And that kind of shakes things as far as the extended version of the Bible that people follow. And so a lot of why it didn't get included. But in Enoch says that Azazel taught men to make, this gets really interesting. Now, he perceives Azazel to be a fallen angel. Now, again, they're going to put in context of what they know and are familiar with, their belief system, their tradition, their experience with the world. And Azazel came from the skies, must be an angel, right? Whether it actually was or not, well, that's where the debate comes in. My voice is getting glitchy again. Try going out and coming back in, Brenda. I mean, I don't know if it is for anyone else, but my apologies if it is. Hopefully not everybody having an issue. So Azazel Enoch says men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, which are like the metal armor that protects your voice. Everybody's getting glitchy there too, huh? Well, I hope it doesn't last. I don't know why it is, and I apologize. So he made the breastplates and such, made known to them metals of the earth and the art of working with them, bracelets and ornaments, and use of antimony, which is a chemical element of atomic number 51, which is a brittle silvery white metalloid, and beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones and coloring tinctures. It's good now. Good. Hopefully it'll stay good. I don't know what was behind it, and my apologies. Hopefully everybody did hear what I already said during that time. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways. Semjaza, leader of the fallen angels, taught enchantments. That's the next door neighbor boy screaming. And root cuttings. Armoros, the resolving of enchantments. Barakijal taught astrology. I think it's Coco, the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of clouds. Arakiel, the signs of the earth. Shamsal, the signs of the sun. And Sarid, the course of the moon. Now, my question would be, how to know that they were fallen angels? And that is an alternate view of this stuff, is that could it have been, off-world beings who came in and taught these things? Because where would an angel need to teach makeup to ancient populations of people, jewelry making, etc.? Like, where would that come in handy? Whereas if it were a race of otherworldly beings, who might have had not had the human's best interest at heart, creating and teaching about weapon making and all that stuff, that's not a very angelic thing to do, in my opinion. I thought it was a fire truck. Couldn't tell if that was outside or online. No, yeah, it's the boy next door. They had a gathering last night and hanging out, and maybe in the backyard thing. Yeah, good times. So, and I question that as well. Would even fallen angels, where would they, be concerned with teaching those types of things? In knowledge of astrology, the constellation, and the weather, all of those things, that's not a bad thing to know. So, it sounds like some of them were trying to help, and some, not so much. Rosie the picker-upper. So one of the next book that he wrote was the Book of Parables. And this book appears to be based on the Book of Waters, but presents a later development of the idea of final judgment and astrology, which has to do with the final events of history. So this was concerned with destiny of fallen angels and the evil kings of earth, and kind of how they got punished and so forth. But if let's say he would have like dreams or visions, and but it's not known if it was actually perhaps astral travel. Was he taken aboard somewhere else in order to, because at one point he does talk about, as far as him gaining the knowledge of the universe and so forth, he was shown these things. So and these things are pointed out to him by Uriel, which is an archangel, and certainly not a fallen angel. And so he talks about being shown these things. Could it have been in person? Maybe. you know, again, don't have enough that amazing his her page of it based on his own experience. So, and that. So he talks about like basically the idea of the end times, what's going to happen, both in punishing the fallen angels in addition to evil kings of men. Enoch is generally thought to have been brought up to heaven by God while still alive. How often does that not happen, right? The Book of Parables basically discusses the end of times, astronomical secrets, the new heaven and new earth, the quaking of the heaven, the behemoth and leviathan, and the elementals. Enoch foretelling Noah of the deluge and his own preservation. So basically creating, the ark and so forth, and how to go about it, and letting him know, hey, this is coming. Hey, Aaron. The third book of Enoch, he also included references to, not just one, but multiple, plural, and a secret oath in the Book of Parables. That's also something curious of where does the idea of there being more than one Satan, Satan was supposed to be the lead head fallen angel, which translates actually into the light bringer, that there's more than one. Anything I came across did not go into further explain that, just it was written as multiple Satans, plural. The third book was the astronomical book. 4 fragmentary were found at the Qumran cave with the Dead Sea Scrolls. It describes the move as knowledge, plural, meaning multiple trips to heaven, guided by Uriel, and describes a solar calendar. And other things described within this book are, dun, 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 where he describes movements of the sun, the moon and its phases, the lunar year, and the 12 winds and their portals. So one doesn't typically have a discussion on portals being Christian or having knowledge from an archangel, or about portals in heaven, but apparently that was part of his things. I did not come across an explanation of 12 winds. However, did I go into the translation of the original text? No, but it just that was one of the things that he discusses in there. Dream visions, and this was another book. In this book, he is shown by a vision of the history of Israel before the time of the Genesis flood, and he covers everything from fallen angels to Alexander the Great in this text. His second dream vision is of animals. Now, this is odd because it's an allegorical account, meaning a representation of abstract or spiritual meaning through concrete or materialistic forms, figurative text of one subject under the guise of another. So basically, it's like the history of Israel presented again, except the human being animals instead of people. I found it interesting and kind of an odd perspective. It's kind of like George Orwell's Animal Farm or something. That's the first thing that popped in my head when I read about that. And perhaps, there are discussions of, like among the Anunnaki, that some of them viewed humans like no better than animals, or a slave race that they allegedly created is no more than animals. So could he have been hinting at that? Maybe. That's the only other angle I could think of that could be possibly talking about that. And so human were also representing angels in the text. So he had like them demonstrating both. They were both represented by humans and also as angels. The next is the Epistle of Enoch. This dates to about 170 BCE, before current era, and the 1st century BCE. This book talks about the paths of the righteous and unrighteous, personal responsibility of an individual, Also the reward for the just and the punishment for the quote sinners. It also takes history up to the birth of his great-great-grandson Noah, and discusses and kind of in between, but it really is about the beginning of the fallen angels and basically seeking retribution against, the evil kings, etc. Also brings up the names of the fallen angels. Now, some interpretations of this text refer to this info as like ancient alien theories and their interventions with Enoch. Hi, Christopher. Long time no see. So I live in predominantly a Norman state, which I know you mean Mormon, and we have a city here named Enoch. I'll have to look into why. Interesting. So he gives the names of the fallen angels and what they are alleged to be, but he doesn't ever reference them as being demonic in nature. So one scholar interpreted what he gave as the names as being Aramaic. No, I knew it was, so I said I knew you meant Mormon because I know where you live. I know where you live. That's scarish, is it? Nathaniel Schmidt says, quote, the names of the angels apparently refer to their condition and function before the fall. So I don't know what the literal translation can get into, but that's what he deciphered the information to be. Of interest to note that despite being left out of the Bible, the Book of Enoch, or just Enoch himself, is referenced over 100 times in just the New Testament alone. That is more times than Psalms is brought up in the New Testament or discussed. So if they shun the knowledge, then why would they incorporate him so much? But again, it's very much presented as if the reader of the text is already familiar with the original Book of Enoch information. And so it kind of presents it in that format. So interesting. I promise I won't show up on your doorstep. It'll be under your window. No, I'm just kidding. So also of interest is that biblically speaking, he is referred to many times as a prophet. Yet many any prophecy presented from anyone except Christ as being demonic or in nature has reached it outright. Yet he was a prophet. Thank you for that. I just see me like you're a noise outside. You see me peeking up over the edge of your window with just my glasses. That'd be hilarious. I'm sorry. Who says I don't have any imagination whatsoever? Modern interpretations and quote pseudo beliefs, which hey, that's all of us mostly, right? So there's a gentleman named Willows who is an author, you're funny, Karen. Yeah, I'm Donna the Stalker. He also hosts shows on the stream network called The Fifth Kind. He has written books, including Escaping from Eden. Does Genesis teach that the human race was created by God or engineered by ETs? Be Thou My Breastplate, 40 Days of Guiding Your Life to God the Celtic Way. Gardening is a State of Mind. And The Scars of Eden. Has humanity infused the idea with memories? So he's going to explore those theories, right? But he's not really in his career. He's 30s as a pastor, taught many to discover Genesis, what it actually means to know, but exploration and teaching of it to other pastors, that he started seeing certain inconsistencies, if you will, in translations from Hebrew into like Latin and or English, including the word the Elohim, that the Bible presents it almost like it's a quality that a being or someone possesses. So kind of like, I am, I don't know, a great teacher, and I don't know, I have a screaming child next door. But the literal translation is the powerful ones, plural. Your setting phone video is glitchy and chat not coming upright, and Sandy is only hearing every other word. Uh-oh. Talking head sounds. So apparently we're having a lot of video and audio issues tonight. I apologize. I do not know why, unless it's from the screaming child next door. It's like thing. I'm not sure where it would be glitchy. I don't know if it's in the site that if it's anything on our end, I apologize. So I don't know why, but I apologize for that. If I go and I'm not on my side, I'm seeing it be laggy, but I don't know. Thought it was a dog. No, a dog. Yeah, it could be both, Sandy. I don't, no clue. But it is a little bit laggy video on my side. Not bad. I'm not freezing like I have in the past, so no idea. So hopefully it's enough that you guys can hear it. If you need me to repeat that last information, I can. Let me know in chat if you need me to. It comes and goes. Okay. So basically, Paul Wallace, like I said, he's an author and a pastor and things. And he started noticing in teaching other people, as other pastors and ministers, how to decipher Genesis and teaching it and so forth. So what he started noticing is that certain words that are presented in the Bible are really like they're taking liberties with the Hebrew word. For example, the Elohim. Now, the Bible interprets as like a quality of a singular being. So like the powerful one, in other words, like God. Whereas its literal translation is actually plural of the powerful ones, more than one, meaning right? And so he said, that really just spit on it for him in translating. He said nowhere else in any of the texts, in Hebrew language, is anything presented as that where it's like a quality. Like you wouldn't say that. I'm trying to have an example he gave in one of his videos, but he was saying like you would say like a rabbit's white or something, you would be like that fast rabbit is white. So it's kind of, again, it's like Elohim, literal translation is the powerful ones, but the Bible presents it as the powerful one, as in like that's God. So it's like a mistranslation of the Hebrew text of which it was supposed to all come from. The Hebrew Bible was written first, and then the Christian Bible went on to be published afterward, several centuries apart, literally, in when one was written and the other came about. So, was it just some mistranslation on the part of the translator, or was it intentional to kind of give me the idea of like the Anunnaki, who were said to be off-world population of beings who came here to evolve us. And as we discussed before, that there is a big chunk of time in human evolution that's unaccounted for, where we went from hunters and gatherers throwing spears to having knowledge of farming and so forth. And we talked about that in our show. Even he said that there was an example he likes to reference from his native homeland is Australia. And he said it was a gentleman who lived there back in the 1900s who took him 20 years to come with the correct hybridization and genealogy of plants in order to create one specific kind of wheat called Federation wheat. Now, in the ancient Saxons, we early humans allegedly did it with like 6 different crops. And so it took 20 years using all of the other known knowledge on farming to apply it to creating and refining one kind of crop, to creating, that takes a little more, but where did that knowledge come from? So we just did. So he, again, started leading him down different paths, investigate this further and to expand his own knowledge and understanding things. He didn't start out some by any means. He was a pastor, that's what he did. And noticing inconsistencies in it, in text, in the translations that made him question further and go to further research, looking into it, comparing to like the Sumerian people and that they're mentioning of the Anunnaki from sky people, and then went on to realize that every major population of people around the world all make mention of there being beings that descend from the sky and teaching them, giving them advanced knowledge on what they had. So that kind of led down a whole other rabbit hole, as we know this information can. So again, he studied Genesis extensively, and he wouldn't come out publicly as the pastor, and I don't know what denomination he is. I don't think he talks about it publicly, but says anyways. But is it my bandwidth on my end? Figures. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. Katie says it's on my end that my bandwidth is laggy, which, I live in a very rural area in upstate New York, so not a huge surprise. My house had never even had internet in my apartment before I came here, so what does that say? So my apologies, guys. Maybe the replay might be a bit better. Always welcome to message me for additional information if you missed blocks of the show and it's just not working. Have you, or redo it, and live if some wanted, where it's just the group itself. If you it all, I know how frustrating it is when it happens. When I'm watching stuff and you end up like just giving up, so I get it. Yeah, I'm in a very, very small town out in the middle of nowhere, literally. The nearest towns are all like 20 and 30 miles away from my town, if that says how rural I am. So Paul Wallace's research, again, led him down different rabbit holes. So the Elohim translates into literally the powerful ones, plural, not singular, or as the Bible translates it, as of the attributes belonging to someone. Other people going in and out too, Aaron, it's not helping, so it's just going to be this way, I guess, tonight.
Hey, Donna, I don't know if you want to try it. It might work, but going out and coming back into the meeting might actually correct some of the Wi-Fi or bandwidth.
Okay, try it and see if it works. All right, so guys, I'm going to pop out and pop back in and see if it works. So be patient with me for a second. It'll just take a second, like when I've frozen before. That's all I'm going to do, and I'll be right back. So give me a minute here, and I will go out and come back in.
All right, I'll entertain everybody. Hi, everybody. I hope you guys have had a beautiful weekend. I know there's been lots of things going on Soma Fusion Media, so please do check them out. Here's the voice of God. No, let me turn my camera on so you can all see me. Hi, I'm right here. So I hope you guys have all had a great weekend. If you haven't already checked out some of the stuff on Soma Fusion, you can either go over to the Soma Fusion page. Of course, there's plenty of work that's been up there of mine and other people's. So please do check it out and invite all your friends to come along too. I do have the website back up and running. So if you go over to somafusionmedia.com, you can see all of the stuff that's happening on over there. I'll hand it back to you now. Bye.
Hi guys, I when I was coming back in, I was looking at my phone screen and saw the voice of God joke on there. Had me laughing. Yeah. And then she showed herself, so you know who it was, if anyone not familiar. Oh, I bet you're exhausted, Karen. That's a huge move, lady. My goodness, has your stuff gotten there yet, by the way? Yeah, hopefully this will maintain being better. That would be nice, right? Yeah, Karen just moved from Colorado out to California and drove all the way and was still, last we spoke, waiting for things to arrive. So she's been like camping out in her apartment. So hopefully this maintains better and we keep going. So again, Paul Wallace kind of noticed that things weren't exact translations from Hebrew in the Bible that he'd always been led to believe. So, for example, referencing the Elohim was actually a translation directly from Hebrew as the powerful ones, being plural, not a singular, like one God, which of course that's the basis of the Christian faith, is monotheistic belief. So, I don't know what book, Renee, that you're referencing. So does this possibly mean that Enoch was, an abductee, for lack of a better way to come out and say it? Okay, we know he was shown these things, but were they visions? Was he, abducted? Because it says he makes multiple trips to heaven to get shown these things, and the archangel Uriel, I wasn't going to call him an archangel, but Uriel is an archangel, and that he was given a year's notice that he would be taken to the heavens, plural. You only get a warning heavens for stuff. She'd been waiting for things that the moving truck hadn't got her yet. So, it gives pause to think about different perspective anyways. To go taking it from a strict view of, was the ancient Anunnaki text correct? It's falling on me. It's just a hair on my bracelet or something. Yeah. Was the ancient Anunnaki text correct that the came from the sky and ended up impacting stuff, advanced knowledge and advancing civilizations? But again, every race of people reference that should be like these wide things coming to the sky. How they're viewed is dependent upon where they're from in the world, what their culture is, etc. There's a reference frequently made to the Dogon tribe in Africa, who had, up until really the last century, no outside human contact with other cultures, and they describe all this advanced knowledge on like astrological planetary stuff. And when asked where they did get this stuff from, they said from Sirius C, which even at that time when they first started saying it, we, meaning science, NASA, etc., hadn't even identified there being a Sirius C. And at at Orion's belt, there are 6 stars in that. So the one that from there gave sky and planetoids and places. So give some pause, kind of look at the difference of any totally conspiracy theorist with things. I mean, personally, I do believe, yes, this is possible, because there's so much ancient text, artwork, etc., supporting these advanced ancient civilizations that existed long before science says they existed, which we talked about the last time, but also all the different places that reference sky people coming down teaching them that. It's worse on Ted's end. I'm sorry. On my end, I'm not being glitchy at all, but so I apologize if anyone else is not getting it good, coming through well. I guess it's just going to be one of those nights. Sorry, Aaron. Okay, so again, we don't know whether he was, when he was, quote, shown the heavens, by Uriel, if he was taken through, getting a vision, if he dreamt about it, if, I wouldn't be surprised at my bandwidth being stupid. I apologize. That's all I can. The latest equipment my ear has. So no, it's my fault, but I feel bad because everybody's show to happen, and then disappointing when you can't hear it and see it right. So Facebook being rude, is that not the case? So Uriel instructs him according to Enoch in astrological in astrology and the astronomical placements of planets as well as of the cosmos. And again, he's going to perceive the basis of beliefs. Some of Enoch's experiences are validated by the prophet Ezekiel in the Bible, who basically reports that he was picked up in a craft that flies him around, showing him ancient cities in Iraq, and finally deposits him in Tel Aviv. Now, while Ezekiel wasn't taken off planet, based on the description of the vehicle, for lack of a better thing to call it, that Ezekiel describes in the Bible, just read your comment in chat, Katie. So based on his description, Ezekiel's description of this vehicle that picked him up and took him around seeing the ancient cities, NASA actually followed the plans like how it was described and copied it. And that's like the type of wheels that are currently on the Mars rover that's, exploring the surface of Mars. And it was a type of wheel that it wasn't just something that could go side to side, but spin in, a complete circle. So it could just change directions as needed without, just turning actually and doing a 15-point turn. What today? Facebook is a hater. If I'm in Facebook jail for saying that, then it was worth it, right? Facebook is the way I always explain it to people. It's because it's private law corporation owned, can make up their own rules to go by. And if one don't agree or like it, then, they don't have to be up on it. But unfortunately, we all are. It's kind of an addiction, but, they'll make their own rules. Right or wrong, Facebook. So anyhow, could they be describing in modern terms like an abduction having happened? And again, he wasn't taken off. I just blinked out on my other screen for a second. He doesn't describe being taken off world. Ezekiel doesn't. But he doesn't describe his experience as a dream or a vision. But this craft picked him up and he was dropped off. So they took him for a ride and dropped him off in Tel Aviv. I'm not sure the reasoning why something like that would happen. And in biblical, odd, but again, I do know that in fact that the researchers went on to using the description of vehicle or craft to create, working technology in our time frame for modern scientific or space exploration. So, like I said, they did reproduce it. It did play out as I saw like a drawing representing based off the description Ezekiel gives. And it was an interesting looking craft compared to what one might think of as spacecraft typically. But what it reminded me of is it's called the Vanas of Indian text. They described and had all these in-depth details on these flying craft that could go off-world or not, that how to build them, how to fuel them, how they were powered, how they moved, etc. It's these, like ancient Indian texts from the Bhagavad Gita. I just have to read it out right. People run Facebook and come back to where the computers and everything in this stack and collect the money. A little bit of both, Aaron. So like the Vanas they sort of were kind of honeycomb shape, and like you see a lot of ancient buildings in India have the shape of the Vana on top of the buildings, from ancient civilizations having built them. And so they more, Ezekiel's craft more resembled a Vana than any other craft I'm aware of, but he definitely describes like legs coming down off of it, and like a metallic look to it and so forth. So thought I heard you, God. So Ezekiel's travels were earthbound, whereas Enoch even went beyond our solar system based on how he describes. And keep in mind that there were telescopes back then to see these things that that he describes of being shown and taught by Uriel. How else could he have accurately described them? And he did. This was, in this case, the man on the man. Exactly. Maybe a little bit of both. Trying to find the date again for when the Book of Enoch was written in, and I know it was like a couple hundred years or more BCE, basically. And I just froze again. Damn it. All right, I'm gonna go back out and come back in because I'm frozen. Damn it all.
Unless God is a god who is a man, correctly speaking, I would be a goddess. Let Katie run Facebook. Yeah, we could do that. We could do that. I'm pretty sure that I could do a better job than Zuckerberg. Uh-huh. Let me let Donna back in. And she's coming in. Here's the other voice of the goddess.
Elmo's world. Sorry. That just got that in my head. Sorry, guys. I just happened to glance up and see that I was frozen. God could be a sweet transvestite. Could be. Okay, so what I had been saying before I froze, and I don't know if y'all could hear me before as I was frozen or not, if you guys still had volume or not or sound to it, but I was discussing how basically there were no telescopes back in the days when the Book of Enoch was written. And so in keeping with that, how could Enoch have accurately described galactic things that we are aware of today? But we certainly weren't 2,300 years ago plus, and that's how long ago those texts were written. So obviously something had to have happened for him to see these things and accurately describe them, and he did. And he says Uriel showed him. Did he take him out in a craft to point out, like, there's that star and that star, which is how the text makes it sound like, or was it some vision connection thing he did, or remote viewing? Was he astral traveling? We don't know. However, he did accurately describe in his text on the astronomical information being correct. So make of it what you will with that. He definitely makes it clear that he's trying to understand all that he's taking in from these incidences is, based on his limited world views he had at the time. The sky was clearer back then. Space is growing. Could they have been closer? I mean, it wasn't just things in the Milky Way galaxy, though, Karen, that he was shown, according to the text. He was shown things on a cosmic, like grand universal scale. So even things that we've only in recent times discovered, you only see so far. And I read something once that gave a really good explanation of the Earth, because of where we're located. And with the technology we currently have, trying to see things out there from the planet, that it's very much like being an official view of things. So, anything we see is going to be limited on how far we can see from planet. So there's better technology. Yes, we have telescope stuff, but, the modality of their rate of travel, I mean, can take forever and a day for them to even reach the outskirts of, a couple minutes away, never mind the outside of the known planets, and to see further. So he says that Uriel came and showed him these things, and of the cosmos. So again, there's no viewing whether he was astral traveling with Uriel, or was he taken aboard something and shown these things. Was he perceiving Uriel as being, and he just described him as having like a vague humanistic form. And we don't have an accurate portrayal of what angelic beings are supposed to look like. We put wings on them. That some of that's based on ancient artwork and photos and so forth that have been found. However, do any of us accurately say this is an angelic being looks like? Not many. Even when I've encountered anything like this, it's like an energetic form. It's not. It's more energetic form than it is humanistic form. So he just describes it as like a vague form. So again, we only are recently starting to validate some of what he says he saw, and that Uriel took him and showed him based on now. And again, 2,500 years ago, we didn't have all, then he didn't have all that type of technology back then to see it on his own. From the Bible description of an angel, I'd be scared. Yeah, they were said to be pretty frightening looking beings. But he doesn't describe Uriel as looking like that. He describes as a big humanist form, or vague human form. So in the other chapter of the book, whereby his describing of the fallen angels, wouldn't it make sense if, from like our more modern view of these things, if the fallen angels were, again, why would fallen angels give humankind all this knowledge of everything, the cosmos, how to make makeup, create weapons to fight each other? Now, okay, that part of it I could kind of see, if they were indeed fallen angels to create havoc among humans, and that was the fallen angels was their willingness or unwillingness to look at humans according to God's will, and blindly go along with God covering them and protecting them. They were supposed to be the divine sons and the creations of God, and humans were being for them, and it made too happy, so that booted. But is it possible that, based on our knowledge of stuff, all this stuff regarding extraterrestrial contact, extraterrestrial craft is coming to light slowly but surely as being valid, and the military is coming forward with some minute disclosures. Talk about it has been going on for, it's even shown in artwork dating back well beyond the Renaissance period of time, in ancient, paintings and so forth. You see things up in the background of the sky that isn't what scholars tend to say they are. And with reference to the fallen angels mating with human women, that would create a hybrid being, and we would know it. And it said, they were of so large size, they basically had to be delivered from science section. They're giants. You can't fit a giant through your hoo-ha, I'm sorry to say. Yes, I said hoo-ha. That's not work. So, how many women survived that process back then, where modern medicine did not exist to do a proper section. So, in keeping with that, it's just another view of the text, putting it in more modern terms, and using more modern technology, because again, he interpreted it based on his view of the world at the time and society, culture. Is it possible that could have been a skewed view? Yeah, of course. It's all interesting that the Book of Enoch is not included in the internationally accepted canonized text of the quote like mainstream Bible, either Christians or Judaism, but is followed by the Ethiopian Orthodox sect. Yet it is referenced, like I said, many times like it's accepted information and already well known about. Believers shouldn't be afraid to read the Book of Enoch, as is frequently mentioned as being a biblical figure. So it's not like you're creating some or having some sin event happen to read this text. Because again, even just in the New Testament, he's brought up over 100 times, and not bad ways. He was, Noah's great-great-grandpa. So, he's not seen as a negative figure or evil being. So to investigate text, it's not a sin. And anybody who tells you it is kind of, a little off-centered there. That current book of Jude, Enoch is directly quoted several times, again, as if the readers were familiar with the Reddit. Paul, he also says that the ideas presented in Enoch are shared in cultures worldwide of this part of belief systems. Excuse me. Things may go another name in other places, of course, but they all involve ancient beings here, humans, all the story of the giants. That's not just localized to the fallen angels' view of things. Excuse me, I had a lot. Continuing to the idea of giant beings, so these remains have been found. The skeletal remains. There are several photos out there back in the earlier days of photography when they were first unearthed. And then the Smithsonian got involved. And so, we're going to delve into that more in a second. But, the Bible references them as the Nephilim, and that the giants being the results of that. Now, giants are perceived in different ways. In some place looked at as God beings or mighty, likened to people of men of renown, who've gone and advanced beings who, had all advanced knowledge and ruled, justly for a number of years. It's seen as this like bloodthirsty race of beings that are more closer to how cavemen used to be portrayed in the media, of being, more kind of dim-witted and excruciatingly violent and warring-like and destructive. And even Enoch, he talks about them in that way. In the beginning, when I started anything that human had, then turned, to the perverted perversions with the animals and beasts and birds, and then to, even drinking the blood. So, I guess it's up then an individual how you want to see them. They're created in different ways and places, even sometimes contradictively within similar, because I want to say, even within the Bible, in some places it differs between the Old Testament and the New Testament of how they're viewed. They're still called the Nephilim, but they're, and like I said, in one place referenced as being renowned, who've done great things, and described like warring, bloodthirsty beings. And look at the story of the famous one that we all know of David and the Goliath, and that Goliath is some, we all were taught that Goliath is a horrible being and was justly killed and brought down by little old, David, and taken out by it. So what's the difference is, I always used to say when I was in my younger days that, what did God get some lobotomy between the Old Testament and the New Testament to have such a divergence of schools of thought? And anytime I asked those type of questions was in the church, I was just told either, well, we don't follow the Old Testament, we follow the New Testament. Well, if you follow the book and you're a Christian, how can you pick and choose? like that, which you're going to follow and which you don't. Isn't that kind of hypocritical? That never got answered either, or wasn't looked upon kindly for my asking. And, you know, in the books, we've been book group, Seth Speaks material, you know, he talks about it in there as the old, and made that explanation made perfect sense to me, that the Old Testament was written during multiple time in history where wars were going on everywhere all the time, and that God was the qualities that respect a leader and a powerful leader, to delve the justice, heavy-handed, and in the whole 9 yards. And the Old Testament and New Testament was written at a calmer time in human history where things kind of chilled out a bit, and there wasn't so much of that going on. So then God is viewed as a much kinder, gentler God during that time frame. And the currently accepted Bible is actually quite cut down compared to the Bible I have. Yes, absolutely. Pictures of alien spaceships are all over ancient pyramids. Correct. I believe aliens have a lot to do with our technology, said Aaron. Let's see. One to be up and get out of that age from my grandmother. No, you'll have that one kid in the face. Just kidding. Hey, you know my weird honors are real. So it's a matter of belief. I'm not here to change anyone's foundation of beliefs by any means. I'm in no way, shape, or form condemning Christianity in any way. I'm only merely offering alternate use of the material, I guess you could say. Most of us are ready to accept, right? So, like I said before a minute ago, skeletal remains have been found of people who are over 7 feet tall. They all seem to have commonality of their dentition, their teeth, having double rows of teeth in their mouths, having much larger skulls and skeletons, of course, because they're over 7 feet tall. Some had, you know, the elongated skulls to them as well. And there was some divergence in thought of whether that was from head binding to or that they're all human beings. They can. And I definitely, and then but it's, you know, it's just they want to protect their own interests first. So again, like when these skeletal remains were found, pictures were taken of them, and if you go look up giant skeleton remains on the internet, you're going to get those photos that are obviously faked and hoaxed and whatever. But I have seen ones that are valid, that someone like in a personal collection, etc. And then the Smithsonian come in, take possession of the remains, but then in American Indian, Native Americans with the mound build stuff through the Hopewell culture, to really span pretty much the whole center of the States, from Mexico up New Mexico all the way up to the top of the country. In some of the skeletal remains as well, except with the with those remains. So there's a archaeological law on the books 20 years ago called the NAGA law, and that basically stands for the Native American Protection Act or Repatriation Act, and basically states that remains are found on Native American grounds. They have to, sure, they can remove them for study or whatever, but then they have to be identified and returned to the whatever existing tribes they belong to for property bail. And museums are not allowed to hold on to the remains. I personally think that this should apply across the board for no matter what race of people came from, that it shouldn't be limited to Americans, but and museum drawers are just full of skeletal remains that, you know, it's sad because nobody knows who they are, where they came from, who they belong to because they weren't properly labeled. They were swiped out of a site and then stored. So nobody knows at this point where they were from or why they took possession of them. And what happens to those. But the NAGPRA law does make sure that they do have to return any remains found on Native American lands to be returned to the tribe for proper reburial. So that's a positive, but again, I think it should go across the board. Most of everybody's, as long as they're not here to whether, yes, they're everywhere. We are the only ones. Aliens are here for you personally, Karen, just you. Right, Aaron? They kill us. We are not ready for them. I am. Yeah, no, I mean, that's universally thought of that if they were here to kill us, they would have been already. They certainly, if they have a technology to travel, light years away to here, then, they're not going to be by our puny little weapon systems that, they want to take out with now. Now, that said, I do think just like you have good and bad people out there who, some have bad agendas and want to hurt other people, you're going to find that amongst any race of beings, human, animal, otherwise, going to be those that want to take advantage and hurt others, and others, have best interest of other hearts. So that's going to be the same thing that I would assume. So again, there's also a lot of even cave art that shows giants in relief, and being obviously much bigger statue compared to the other figures of themselves that are portrayed on the walls in the cave art. So, I do believe this race just once roamed. There's also these electricized footprints that look human in nature, but they're massive, and they're fossilized in stone. So how can that's not something that can be faked. So it's not like someone going out with a mold of a Sasquatch footprint, putting it in the snow. These are rock. You can't kind of buy that too. But they and there are huge we can put inside them. So, well, can you explain that other than some giant being once roamed these and they were of that stature? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to say universally that couldn't have existed. And archaeological evidence is all validate the event of the flood, and that was written about the Book of Enoch. And again, he kind of went on to give a heads up to his great-great-grandson, Noah, hey, this is coming, get ready, and here's what you do about it. And so every other culture has part of their origin story, and now geological evidence backs that up. Paul Willis does postulate that if we and the giants were a part of extraterrestrial involvement, then they may have to cause flood to eradicate their past creations that they weren't happy with, and that the story was then perceived to be caused by God because, what else would an understanding of undereducated people in foreign lands who, based on cultural beliefs, see something like as being coming from? They wouldn't entertain that it was caused by extraterrestrials or even their idea of it. So by God or gods, depending on one's beliefs, that the floods came from. They did also find, through the Darwin theory of evolution and so forth, that we must share a great ancestor, the apes. They have shown within the DNA that I want to say it's, now I suck at I'm remembering all the terminology for this, not the genome, but this part of what can creating the DNA strand that I think is number 12, whatever it is. Like, brain blank, I'm sorry. I lack science memory. Robot. Hey sis, how are you, lady? That it's a combination of great ape and human DNA that led to Denisovian humans showing up on on the Earth timeline. And so it's not like there's a missing being that was half and half, but it was like something combined there. Something had to cause interference. Thank you, Christopher. Yes, the chromosome. That chromosome is a combination of that. Well, wouldn't that infer that something modified it to create that combination first? I mean, that's the first thing I thought of when I heard that and was watching a video that contained that information. That researchers came and showed this stuff was, it's chromosome 12, that there was one of them that was a combination between ours and apes. And I used to question this even as a kid before the knowledge of DNA science and delight if we evolved from apes, then why are there still apes roaming the earth in that population? Why didn't they also evolve? And nobody could seem to kind of explain to me either, which, I didn't do well with not getting answers. It led me to further go and research on my own, seek them out, and they must be out there somewhere. And so that's created the monsters. And so science says that also the Great Flood may have been the meteoric strike on the earth that led to the melting of the ice caps, and prior to the last mini stage that we had. Is that possibility? Sure. That would have risen the oceanic levels, that would have caused like global tsunamis to occur, and out everything. And so that Genesis wasn't so much about the creation of humans as much as a reboot of humans, which, again, interesting concept. Power that we're not being taught. I think that it's, we were kind of made to not remember. We chose that on the other side, I think, before coming back and reincarnationally, that, our human brains are not made to know all of the answers while we're here, but we chose to forget what we know because it would interfere with learning what we need to learn and we're here for. Anytime a science doesn't know something, they never just are honest and say the other question. Well, just religion does too, Aaron. That's normal. I've pissed off many a missionary, right? Yeah, so I mean that, and thankfully I was given the right to go out on my own and experience and explore other belief systems and see what they were about, find what was me. I could go in any direction or go with none if I chose to. I was allowed that freedom as a kid, which I definitely respected from my mother doing so. And me interpret these beings as mythology, nothing more. Others say that they're meant as more metaphorical interactions only. But these texts of Enoch and Ezekiel mention them as angels, not what exactly they are. So we all know that these watchers reported there was some type of beings that inbred women and created a hybrid race of beings. I think of that. I read the story. I'm double thinking. Yeah, she pissed off many missionaries. What's weird is that when I need spiritual help, I get these strong events that happen, and then I will remember who I am. They'll forget again later because I'm over again. Well, but that's your choice to let it take over again, though, Ted. Yes. I modified her typo. Glory speak. So consider this, at least open-mindedly looking at all of this. Wouldn't we have to be similar enough to genetically in order to make us? Because not just anything can come mate with us and create an offspring, even if they were giant race of beings. Wouldn't DNA have to be enough to produce offspring? Things that make you go, Yeah, no, it is a choice, Ted, that, we can keep evolving. I mean, we're never going to have 100% of the answers while here. The human brain comprehensive enough to hold it all. But, we can get further than what we started out as, and that's why we're here. So if you choose to keep forgetting, I guess one would ask themselves why you keep forgetting, why you choose to. So, I mean, that is together, just, I started thinking about all this last night while I was doing this research this morning of, well, if the Watchers were to mate with us, they would have to be genetically similar enough to create an offspring to, be aberrations of, God's eyes with the giants, etc., whatever you want to view the giants as. So if we're just, I don't know, angels even, angels were said to be, genderless essentially and not have any gender assignment. So if it were fallen angels, they were just how they made us. And why would they assume a human form in falling, so to speak? Where would they change from being an angelic being into a human form and then to go forward because they're lusting after human women? I mean, so these are things that, were running through my head and doing this stuff. It's kind of like a horse and a donkey can mate and a horse and a donkey can make a mule, and a mule can't go on to reproduce, but their DNA similar enough that can reproduce between a donkey and a horse, but they can't go on to have offspring. So, whatever mated with humans would have had to have similar DNA. So to me, ergo, wouldn't it make kind of sense that if it was, say, ET involvement in us, and that that's what accounted for that great leap forward in human advancement that science still hasn't accounted for yet, where we suddenly went from being simple hunters and gatherers to having the knowledge of farming, jumping to building these grandiose ancient civilizations, that whatever was involved with that if they tinkered with our DNA, what have you, and perhaps inserted some of their DNA into ours. And would that more make sense if that we could reproduce based off of that, making hybrids versus some energetic being that has no gender? I mean, but they can make you see. They can make you see, but it's still, you know what I mean? Like it's the same familial structure genetically, or else they can't go on to reproduce. Deep thoughts at 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. and this morning. Research ran late today. Cindy, okay. Willows spend after dark with Lori. Don't let me in the room then. RH negative, supposedly alien. I'm RH negative. I'm O negative. And we've done with the exploration of the RH negative show that even that science has been trying to replicate RH negative blood and can't. And you cannot take someone who is of a positive blood type and give it to someone RH negative because they'll kill them. Whereas, our blood is universally donated to anybody, but we can't have anyone's blood, just anyone's blood. So it has to, we have to get a negative, RH negative blood factor type, whether it's A, B, or O, but it has to be negative or else it'll kill us. So, again, it kind of lends credence to some of these theories. Yeah, Katie, just so you know, in October, for the month of October, each week, usually a Friday of October, I do an extra show, Willows spend after dark. It allows for the darker topics, typically kind of stay the rest of the year, history things and your darker topics. I saved just for October for Halloween spook factor things. So that's what Willows Bend After Dark is. It is the name of the show. They can figure out where RH negative comes from. I'm sure they could. No, they can't. No, they can't figure it out. And they they've tried cloning it, if you will, and they haven't been able to produce a viable, usable Rh negative factor blood type. There have been stories of people who are of an Rh negative factor blood type who, turn up as Jane Does or John Does in the morgue, whose bodies get claimed by unknown, family members that don't really exist as family members, and that they're taken for scientific research. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Makes you wonder what they're doing with it. But yeah, I think that they're trying to replicate it and still haven't unlocked that key. Yes, everybody loves Willows Bend After Dark, and I typically dress up for it to make it more fun. So there you go. And anybody who does dress up, I will typically let them come on camera and show off what they did. So that's just a thought I had anyways, when they have to be genetically enough to us to mate with us to reproduce. Enoch also reports the Watchers as coming from the skies and interacting harmfully in human affairs. And, but to me, teaching advanced scientific principles and things isn't interacting negatively. So, kind of not all bad. I wouldn't say naughty, but just deals with darker topics in general. Yep, that was actually, I think this wasn't the second year did Willows Bend After Dark, guys. I believe it was the second year that we created that tradition. So regarding the idea of these beings as being alien in origin or not Earth, modern psychological studies have been done by professionals. So the Department of Defense hired a now deceased Dr. John Mack, who, in order to evaluate military personnel who described as either having been abducted or had sightings. And it does kind of blend in. Yeah, it was the second year. Well, I can only do so much on Facebook, Renee. Come on now. So Dr. John Mack, he gave them, different psychological tests that they had no before knowledge of what they were going to be even asked about. Never mind planning for the evaluations and preparing for them. His determination was that there were no cases of psychosis or hallucination detected. Operatives had been in contact with something real, and it deserved further serious study, in his opinion. And the tested subjects' stories contain several commonalities, describe both Enoch and Ezekiel and what transpired during that interaction. Even Pope Benedict, the current pope, in 2009 gathered a Donna puts the couch in the corner that month. Exactly. Karen's runs that corner. So Pope Benedict came forward in 2009, gathered a colloquium to discuss the implications theologically of contact with other alien civilizations with the Pontifical Science Academy, which was made of more than 30 members of leading researchers, theologians, and scientists, and concluded that these interactions are the possibilities of their presence was not demonic in nature, etc., and that it merited further study. Is this my ceiling that looks like alien's face looking back at me? They're spying on you, perhaps. So people struggle with the ideas that due to the Bible's presentation, like the only life created can be on Earth, as in Adam and Eve being the first race of beings. But again, I postulate, isn't it possible that was because of all of the ancient civilizations that are coming to light as having been created for that and what the Bible says approximate time frame for Eden to come into existence. These ancient civilizations, the remnants of them are found today, and it keeps pushing the timeline further and further back. So is it possible that Eden was a reboot of humankind? I start over to, when all the quote, failed attempts that Jesus was if it was alien interaction, then, that all of those would have been done away with the great, events that occurred in the natural world that they perhaps caused even. And then Eden came about as a way to restart humanity from scratch. The new birth is so, I mean, all these things are purely speculative, of course, in a matter of belief systems, which again, I'm not here to criticize or critique anyone's foundation of beliefs. And anyone who knows me knows that any of my students I work with, I acknowledge and include your foundation of beliefs in how you proceed forward to help you understand the nature of things as I know it and understand it anyway, to be, from my perspective, that, you have to include that, because you fully get away from your foundation of beliefs, no matter how much you expand and blow up the view and take a lid off the box, I say, that's, having that awakening process occur and learning that there's more than just that, the sides of that little cardboard box you lived in before that. You're still going to have that core foundation of your beliefs incorporated, because it was taught to you during the formation of your personality during the first 5 years of life. Your basic personality is kind of set in stone the rest of your life. And these things are at the same time as our personality is forming. So I be kind of cement those ideas into being part of our foundation. You can't get away from it completely, I don't think, or totally negate it. It's going to at least overshadow parts of how you perceive any of this stuff. So, hey, Miss Ronnie, how are you, beautiful? And thank you again for yesterday, Ronnie. That was unbelievable. So Ronnie had treated me yesterday considerably, very, very graciously, immensely generous of her. And yeah, so I wanted to wish thank you again. No, just the Grace face too. Interesting. I've learned as much as I can. And a lot of people take that approach, Karen, but there's still going to be hits in there in your belief system, kind of with bits and pieces of it in there. So someone pointed that out to me. I still tend to include like the divine sacred white light. That's very much kind of a Christian ideal, but that is how I view it when I stuff from the, I'm seeing stuff that is included in that. And, that's more of a Christian view of stuff, but that's started life as being taught. So does it come from there, or is that the actual nature? I can only say what I see, not, anything else, and what I can talk about from my own perspective. But, that belief in that being a thing and it's part of a belief system and how to process things. So it's the way the popcorn stuff looks like on my ceiling. It's been there as long as I've been living here for 10 months. Count the popcorn, Ted. See how many pieces you have on your ceiling. I used to do that, like when I'd be at the doctor's office or something. They'd be doing some unpleasant procedure, like, pelvic exams, etc. It'd be just focus on that and wait for it to be over. So even, that's one thing I like about, even though I'm not Catholic, any of all the religious views and so forth, I don't agree with, but I do respect Pope Benedict, the current Pope, for his more open-minded ideals, and he's at least willing to stop and consider things versus and trying to be more inclusive rather than, the very very right-wing view of how the Catholic faith has been carried out to date prior to his being Pope. I respect his more willingness to kind of accept a different reality. Why did I freeze again? Dang it. All right, I'm frozen. Let me come back in. Damn it.
And I am back. We all doing all right over there in that chat room? I hope so. And we are back.
There I am. And so if I can stay now, I was like, not again, dang it. I missed a comment. There is a white light. Well, at least from what I've experienced in my NDE, it is a beautiful white light. Yeah, and that's what I've seen too, but it is still kind of a Christian view of things. I still react certain ways to things, dang greenwashing. You know, it's more of, I think, hearing voices. I don't know what got said while in my absence, but I'm not sure if I should ask that. You know, to me, it is still kind of a more Christian view of stuff, but it's what I see. And so whether it's Christian or not, it's what I see when I do stuff. So, oh, nothing. Sure. Katie, the innocent now. Okay. So anyways, the through this colloquium that Pope Benedict did in 2009, they concluded it's nothing demonic in nature and merited further study on the implications theologically of other alien civilizations and so forth. So at least just with that kind of stepping into the 21st century, the only natural and Enoch in terms of be interacted with coming from being angel and like a nature, but from a religious viewpoint. So this is just kind of like an alternate view of material to say these things are always a possibility. Impossible to consider. Sure. These are the possibilities. The book of and like my video forward. These are explanations for alternate explanations for these things. And, you know, if I don't have evidence that something empirically does not exist, I say, well, why can't it? I don't have any evidence saying it can't. And so just science in general shutting it down when they haven't, you know, figured all that stuff out yet either. So until I can empirically be proven it doesn't exist, then I go with stay open to it. So it's kind of how I look at it. Yeah, Katie's quite the prolific writer, as you guys see from all her posts. So what do you guys all think about the Book of Enoch? Let's start with this. What do you guys think that he interacted with? Do you think that it was angelic beings, or do you reside more in the leaning towards, you know, some sort of extraterrestrial beings, off-planet beings, whatever? Okay, Karen. Aliens sounds pretty epic. I don't know if you're meaning voice or the theories, but and considering that he wrote about his stuff, you know, like 300 BCE, things, obviously science was not evolved at that time, and yet he's given all his scientific information go from, and where would an angel come and give that just randomly somebody? I mean, that's what I kind of question too. Maybe out of world beings. Okay. So you guys are kind of resonating with that same idea that, yeah, it's possible. And I can't remember who said it or exactly how it goes, but the gist of it is that when you rule out all viable possibilities, what you're left with, no matter how improbable it may seem, has got to be the truth. I want to say it's Einstein possibly who said that, but I'm not positive. And so, you know, well, we'll rule out everything else. What are you left with? Renee says the future. Wasn't he jumping into the sky by a ship? he says that he was taken into the heavens, plural, and that he was shown these things by Uriel. So whether it doesn't, we don't know whether it was through out of body experiences, astral travel, if it was visions he was getting, remote viewing, or he was taken up into a ship. We don't know that. In the Ezekiel texts, it does say he was taken by a vehicle of type, a craft, and taken around being shown the ancient cities of Iraq and dropped off in Tel Aviv. Strange to have a Bible, don't you think? I kind of think that biblical times didn't know aliens, so they called them angels. Well, that I'm postulating the possibility of, Lori, that, what did they have to equate what they saw to? Their religious beliefs. That overruled like everything in their world, pretty much, especially if they had transferred over to a monotheistic view of the world, that there's one God and that's it. And, whereas the, in Greek mythology, there are multiple gods and goddesses. I personally think it's a hierarchy. Like, God may delegate to different beings to say, okay, you handle this, you handle that. I'm the main head honcho and in charge of things. But, ultimately kind of saying, you can handle this for me. And I view it as a hierarchy. But that aside, so if you are of the monotheistic view, if you encountered a human-like being, quote unquote, one would automatically jump into, if it's not a human, well, it must be an angel or something demonic, but when he referenced them as fallen angels. But again, the DNA of whatever mated with the human women because they found them beautiful would have had to have been similar enough to ours to procreate in some fashion, even if it made a race of giants as the outcome of that mating. There would have had to have been something. And if, to me, that is also a viable possibility. If they tinkered with our DNA in some way to upgrade us, then that kind of a mating and hybridization, because it's really, it's a hybrid, half human, half angel, and created the Nephilim, which is the race of giants. So that would have had to add some of that DNA similarities in order to allow procreation to happen. So things that make you go, Anyhow, so that is, in a nutshell, the Book of Enoch. That was the text, one of the texts that did not get included in the mainstream Bible, the international version of the Bible. There are other books that are also not included, but that question the nature of things, essentially. If it questioned the view that the Catholic Church held of the world and how they wanted people to see things, and that, they were trying to control people's behavior. I mean, they're, how do I want to say it? The leaders in the Catholic faith, they really were not any better than, if anything, worse than the ancient, political figures were fighting and killing each other off and vying for each other's positions and all this political dance stuff within the Catholic faith amongst those religious leaders of the higher ups. And so, they wanted to control people's behavior, to see things from their view only, so they weren't challenged. And instead of, the Pope is seen as like the right hand of God, so to speak, be able to have direct line God, and having the power, ego, that's going to be a big thing. And yeah, they used to kill each other left and right in ancient times for that. But if it didn't meet their view that they wanted people to have with controlling people's behavior with the faith, you were either killed off for it, or you converted, or you practiced in secrecy. It was just like with paganistic and Celtic beliefs, Druidic beliefs, they made them illegal because it didn't vibe with their view of things and they wouldn't convert. So practicing any of those things were made to be illegal. So in keeping with that, people are going to interpret the world based on a belief system. And if a semi-human like being appears to and you are Christian and devout, that yes, you're going to see it as an angel, not as an alien or anything else, because the Bible teaches that we are the only inhabitants of earth to God. So there is no room in there for other races, the beings come off planet. But we've gained in information even about the cosmos since then. Yeah, some of these ancient peoples who specified, like the planet, what was referenced as Nerubu, that's been pretty well identified and thought to be the 10th planet discovered and hiding behind another planet, like we talked about the last time. It only through its rotation around the sun, it only crosses paths with Earth every 3,600 years. So there's not going to be a lot of memory or writings about that far back, or, maybe just hinting at it, but they knew about it. So where would that knowledge have come from? A planet at the end of our solar system, hidden behind another planet that we can't see except for once every 3,600 years. Yeah. Let me see. You're welcome, Sandy. I wonder if Andre the Giant's mom made it with a Nephilim. And that's also another argument towards that, is that that DNA may have still gotten passed down. And they say now that like anyone who is of giant stature in today's world, that is normally, something wrong on a, like with the, yep. It's a gland. I'm blanking on the name of it. I hate when I do that with a word. Anyways, that's what's behind the growth and some experiences. But I still think that there has to be a genetic aspect that they're carrying that allows for that to possibly happen. Even if, just the influx of a hormone is modifies basic DNA. So I think that's a genetic marker that can be carried forward, just as dwarfism, or you can have two normal sized humans mating together. They end up having an offspring as dwarfism, and something within the genetics of their mixing together creates that as the offspring. In the same way, not the pituitary thyroid, that is, I think it's a thyroid, it's listed as a thyroid disorder, and that leads to a malfunctioning of that can cause hypergrowth. So yeah, the pituitary is also another gland, yep, but it's the thyroid gland I was thinking of. And I think you'd have to have a genetic marker for those things in order to kind of get it, just like you can carry traits, you may not have every single trait that is part of your DNA manifest, but it's the possibility is there. Just like the genetic marker may be within you to develop breast cancer, doesn't mean you're going to 100%, no, but it means you have a higher than normal chance of getting it. So same thing with this stuff. Something has to kind of trigger it, I think, and the influx of a hormone added in, incites that in a child to hypergrow into a giant stature. So I think that we can carry that DNA, much as they discovered that some of us still carry Neanderthal DNA in us. So I think that that's part of it. So yeah, free for all. It's why one religion tells men not to marry, abstain from sex, and drink wine. Another religion rid men to marry multiple women, be fruitful and multiply, and alcohol not allowed. Multiple gods with humans can't claim them. I grew up believing angels were neither female or male, so how could they mate with humans? That's what I said a while ago, Kim, that we're supposed to be genderless, and so where would they have the ability, never mind the physicality to mate with a human woman? They don't, then you kind of the equipment if you're going to take care of that stuff. So again, make sure, think about things in a different perspective. And so if they are, angelic beings are different than what humans are said to be. So our luck to real God is Loki, right? Or a leprechaun. It's my excuse, this glandular When I was in my bar hopping days, I met this guy over 7 feet tall. Right, but it's the rarity versus, commonality. He had to dunk when he comes through the door. My old supervisor at work had both of her breasts removed because she had the genetic marker of breast cancer. No, there are other, a couple of different stars that have also had that done. Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy Osbourne's wife, she did, as well as, I want to say, Angelina Jolie did too. They had them on the chance they go through it and risk their lives. So, as preventive measure, they said they had them. Does it mean that they ever would have developed it? They may never have. They don't want to risk it and dying from it and going through it. So they have to have them removed. Organized religion is almost cult-like. It is, absolutely. I know a 5-year-old that has a growth disorder and she has to have shots for it. She's so tiny. Yeah, the smallest woman in the world, full grown, she's like something like 12 inches high or something like that, 14 inches high. And then, the tallest man, Robert Wadlow, I think his name was, he was, like massive. He was like 2.5 people standing on top of each other high. I can't remember his exact height, but yeah, he was huge. So could that be a gene thing that is straightforward from those days? No, I wouldn't say empirically no. I don't have any evidence. I have never seen any evidence that that's the case. So in that case, if they were mating with us and offspring were created, then if we can carry forward DNA from Neanderthals, then why couldn't we also carry forward the DNA for the giants? So cults, all of them, some are with others. Yeah, there are, absolutely. So, and there are valid cults out there too. So anyways, that's the Book of Enoch, guys. He was seen as a prophet and he spoke of many things. There were more things within the books that were of a prophetic nature. Most of it kind of to do with end of days times and what was supposed to happen and so forth, and the 1,000-year reign of the Messiah and such. But the rest of it had to do with these dreams and visions and his view of world and life as he understood it and his experiences with these other activities. I don't know what else to call it because we don't know, again, if it was out-of-body experiences he was having, if it was an all-dream state, he was remote viewing these things, we don't know. Thank you, Stace. So we only have 2 topics left to vote on the list. I was gonna see, do you guys want me to add to it next week or just finish the one that doesn't get voted for this week and then come up with a gaggle of them of a new list? So the next Willows Bend is going to be on August 16th at 8 p.m. Hard to believe we're almost into the fall again. Well, we're getting ready to vote, Erin, my little impatient one. Thank you, Sandy. So the only 2 topics we have left on the list, because you told me just to keep with what we had last week, are the Anunnaki and the Tunguska event, which was the Russian event that took out half of Russia, and it looked like some nuclear bomb went off, but there was no nuclear bomb there's no signs of that having happened, or any meteoric event occurring. There's no signs of any meteor having caused it, but there's just evidence demolished. It's exploring the why behind that and what could be, and so I'm just teasing, honey. So either the Anunnaki or the Tunguska event for next week. Which would you guys like? Anyone out there who's new to me, allow my audience to choose the topic. So I create a running list. Each week, everyone has an equal vote and the majority rules. If it's a tie, we flip a coin. And then I periodically add new topics to it. So if there's something y'all would like to see covered, as I've covered it already in the past, shoot me a message on Facebook Messenger and find out, and I will let you know. And we're always open to add to the list. So, all right, so we got Tunguska says Tanya. Sanji says Anunnaki. Sandy M says Anunnaki. Stacy says Anunnaki. Stacy says Anunnaki. Katie says Tunguska. Renee says, I remember seeing on the news that a small asteroid flew low over Russia. Well, this was quite a long time ago that this happened, but there's still nothing that grows there now. Lori says Tunguska. Anunnaki says Renee. And so if you remember last week, the Anunnaki were in the Sumerian text in artwork from this ancient civilization, the beings that were said to have given them that knowledge. No, Ted, you're the member and Willows, Ben, you have the right to vote, so vote, flip a coin. If you don't want to vote, that's your choice. There are members who say, I can't decide. But come on, we're down to 2 topics, for heaven's sakes. Come on now, it's not like our usual list of 6 or 7 items to choose from. There's 2. They'll both get covered, and whatever you don't, whatever doesn't get chosen for next week, we'll do the following week. Anunnaki, good enough. And yeah, I did get your before, Renee, of the Anunnaki. Tunguska says Karen. Okay. So like I said, whichever one isn't chosen, we'll do the other one the next week. And next week I will have more topics to vote on. But so like Anunnaki would be for next week, the Anunnaki, Aaron, or the Tunguska. That's all right. I figured out what you meant. It's okay, Ted. Spelling isn't held against you here. The Anunnaki or the Tunguska event, Aaron. So like if whatever one wins this week will be next week's show, and then the other one would be the following week, and then I will add new topics to it. Yeah, that's the phonetic spelling of it, Tunguska. Well, you forgot the K at the end, the ska. You'll choose both to be fair. How's that being fair, Aaron? You're silly. Well, so if that is everybody, then let's see, we got 5, 6, 7. Yeah, it's everybody who I'm showing his numbers away within the show. One more hasn't voted yet, but it looks like the Anunnaki will be for next week. And like I said, we do the Tunguska event just to get it done and off the topic. You don't want to upset no one. Really, you're going to upset somebody by topic, Aaron? Come on now. You're in a weird mood tonight, I gotta say. So we'll cover the Tunguska event just to get it off the board after the Anunnaki, and I will, in the meantime, put together a whole new list of things that we haven't done yet from somewhere. I kind of scour the internet of things for to pick them and list to choose different topics we haven't covered yet. And let's be honest, I've done like 300 shows now, so it gets hard to come up with new ones, but I get creative. So anyways, book group this Wednesday on the 11th, 8 p.m. Eastern time in the section of Willows Bend. The event notice is posted in the group, and we are still reading The Nature of Personal Reality of the Speaking Material. So I know anyone who has missed anything, hasn't been there for any of it, whatever wants to hear, I always give a summary of catching people up or explaining it before we start. So if you admit it, you can still jump in and follow along. So thank you, and you too as well, Tanya. So Anunnaki next week, book group this Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll take it from there. So lots of love and light to everybody. Sorry for all the glitchy McGlitches we've had today. And yes, Jake, I see you, sweetheart. And I will see everybody around Facebook land as always. Have a wonderful night, guys. Love you. Thank you for coming.